Today we're going to explore school and growing up in the west of Scotland for Doris Hill. When you're ready, relax and let us begin our story. School Days by Doris Hill. Doris has very fond memories of her school days in Glasgow, where she attended Albert Road Academy in Pollokshields. She remembers the uniform quite vividly because it was maroon and the motto was "I ready." The girls had to wear a gym tunic and a black beaver hat, which Doris hated. She was at least allowed to swap it for a Panama hat in the summer. She also had to wear a blazer and a trench coat and has fond memories of going into town with her mother to Paisley's, the uniform shop. Generally, Doris was quite keen on school, and her favourite subjects were English, history and games. She wasn't so keen on maths. However, she did like hockey, although used to get some horrible knocks. It was a wonder she had any legs left. Doris had plans to be a PE teacher, and at the time the place she went to study for this was Dunfermline. However, when she was 14, the Second World War broke out and everything changed. Doris was sent to school in the town of Dunoon on the Cowal Peninsula in the south of Argyll and Bute, where her family had a holiday home. She stayed there for a year with another girl she was at school with, whose mother came down and looked after them and her other 2 children. Doris remembers she was a very good cook, and despite the rations, she always managed to make something lovely to eat. They never went hungry, and rabbit was often on the menu. They seldom had sweets, but just accepted everything, and most evacuees had a great time. Doris always said that time in Dunoon was the best year of her life. Children from all over Glasgow were sent there to Dunoon Grammar, and they all wore their different school blazers. She made some of her best friends in Dunoon, Mary and Lilias. Mary was living with her aunt, and Lilias was staying with friends in Hunter's Quay. Today, at the age of 95, Doris and Lilias are still in touch. The teachers were younger than the ones they had in Glasgow, who seemed awfully old in comparison. She remembers her geography teacher, Archie McVicker, whose brother was the writer Angus McVicker. Angus wrote crime thrillers, juvenile science fiction and autobiography. His early writing was interrupted by the war when he served with the Royal Scots Fusiliers, and so most of his fiction appeared following the war. Archie was a very handsome man, and he ended up marrying the commercial teacher, Miss Greenshields. One day, Doris was at the cinema with 3 friends, and they were completely absorbed in the mystery film they were watching, when a head appeared from behind. It was their teacher, Archie, and his fiancée. Well, the girls just about jumped out of their seats. He said, "Are you enjoying the film, girls?" You see, they shouldn't have been there. They should really have been at school. Eventually they fled, and fortunately, Archie didn't tell any of the other teachers. Sadly, later, he was called up to fight and was killed in Italy. Dunoon overlooks the western shore of the upper Firth of Clyde, to the south of the Holy Loch, and to the north of Annellan. Another memory she has is of being in the classroom and hearing a huge bang. It was so loud that some of the windows shattered. The engine room of a French ship had blown up. Doris was never sure whether it was an accident or sabotaged. However, all the crew perished, and there is still a buoy in the Clyde marking where it happened. There was a defensive boom across the Clyde, from Dunoon to the Cloch lighthouse, which stretched about 1.5 miles and was to prevent submarines from getting through. 2 vessels were there to open it to allow the Allied ships to pass in and out. This was such an important seaport during the war because of its position, and more than 1 million American troops used it to disembark. Despite the defensive booms, one submarine did pass through in 1939, the German U-47. It blew up the Royal Naval ship HMS Royal Oak, which was anchored at Scapa Flow in Orkney. More than 800 people were killed, and it had an awful effect on wartime morale. There was always something going on in the town, and the teachers set out to make the evacuees welcome. A Saturday dance was set up in the gym hall at school. It was only for the evacuees, and the local girls and boys took exception to that. They thought they should have been invited, which they should have, as it caused quite a bit of animosity. They would play records like St. Bernard's Waltz, and they would dance. It was all great fun. Then, eventually they got used to mixing with the locals, and sometimes would be invited to their house if they had a party. They had a good social life, really. On some weekends, Doris took the boat over to Gourock, and then the train to Glasgow to visit her parents, who were still working in the city. She liked the freedom of coming up to stay and then returning to Dunoon to see her friends. When the Germans invaded Russia, most people started to drift back home to where they belonged. Doris knew her mother missed her terribly, as her father would write and tell her. After a year, in 1940, she returned home and to her school in Glasgow. However, it wasn't the same, and she found it hard to adjust. She missed life in Dunoon terribly, and it is a place she has always loved and returned to many times over the years.